Next witness, Ms. Frances Beinecke, has been a leading advocate for clean air, water, and protecting our land for many years, and we welcome you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Wyden, Senator Murkowski, and members of the committee. Thank you for holding this hearing today and for inviting me on this to testify on this critical issue. We all know that shale gas is changing our nation's energy profile. If extracted and used in ways that minimize environmental risks, natural gas can be one part of a broader strategy to reduce carbon emissions while providing potential economic benefits. But natural gas cannot be the ultimate answer to our energy future. For that, we need clean and renewable power that is used as efficiently as possible. With stakes this large, it is imperative that we have in place the national safeguards necessary to protect our communities, our environment, and the public health from needless and unnecessary harm. As of now, we lack such safeguards. And those protections we do have are no match for the explosive growth in the use of hydraulic fracturing or fracking in some 30 states across the country. NRDC believes we need to put those safeguards in place before any further expansion in the use of fracking. It is important and essential that we get this right as a country. In more than 3 decades as an environmental advocate, I have never seen a single issue that has frightened, antagonized, and activated people across the country like the practice of fracking. Families are angered and frustrated by their inability to control fracking in their towns and sometimes on their own property. They want to know that their water is safe, that their air is clean, and that their lands and farms are protected, and they want to know that their children are healthy. Now, against that background, I'd like you to imagine for a moment that someone came to your community today and said they had a new technology to try out near your home. It would use massive amounts of fresh water and undisclosed toxic chemicals to break up the bedrock deep underground. It would then bring to the surface substances known to cause illness and environmental harm while polluting the air and creating toxic wastes. If someone said that to you today, would your first reaction be to exempt those operations from existing environmental protections and leave control to a patchwork across the entire country? Not likely. And yet that's what's happening with fracking. Congress has exempted many fracking activities from the most fundamental safeguards we all depend on to protect our environment and health. The Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Air Act, Waste Disposal Standards, and the National Environmental Policy Act. No wonder people across the country are worried, and we need to fix that. Instead, federal agencies have only just begun, half-heartedly at that, to use what authority they do have to protect the public. And it's still unclear how much they will ultimately do, as Chairman Wyden's letter to the Bureau of Land Management indicated just last week. A BLM document leaked to the press later in the week indicated that BLM may be going in exactly the wrong direction, weakening even proposed disclosure requirements that were initially identified. There is no justification for these exemptions and lack of action. We ask this Congress to act and close these dangerous loopholes, which deprive Americans of the basic protections they have come to expect. Meanwhile, as I detail in my written testimony, scientific evidence is mounting about the negative impacts of fracking on the environment. These include damage to health from air pollution that comes from industrializing our landscapes, damage from industrial spills and poorly managed wastewater, and damage to the climate from methane leaks and venting. At the very minimum, the research shows there is no reason to have a default assumption that fracking is harmless or somehow less in need of the kind of federal oversight that has been routine for similar activities for decades. And yet, when not arguing for a complete hands-off approach from the public, the industry calls for regulation to be left to the states. Let's be clear, we see this as forum shopping. States often lack the technical resources or the political wherewithal to enforce adequate safeguards. If a number of states were to begin effectively to oversee this industry, companies would come running to Washington to demand federal rules to preempt what they would surely call a patchwork of state laws. Instead, industry now claims that the specifics of fracking are too local to allow for federal standards. That argument is belied by the industry's own actions. The industry has been working to block local governments from controlling fracking. There is simply no legitimate argument for not using the same cooperative federalism model to oversee fracking that is used for all the other industrial activities that are covered by federal law. And one final but important point. Natural gas, even if properly produced and consumed, is not a complete panacea for our energy challenges. It is still a fossil fuel. When burned, it produces fossil fuel pollution and contributes to climate change. That means that even as we work together to put in place the safeguards we need to protect our environment and health, we must strengthen those policies that promote the energy solutions of tomorrow, including efficiency and renewable power. We have learned as a country some hard lessons about the consequences of uncontrolled resource extraction. As we confront the emerging challenges of fracking, we must learn from our history and not repeat mistakes of the past. We must get these protections right because we may not get a second chance. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today, and I look forward to your questions.